In a dramatic escalation of the ongoing political crisis in this country, the leader of the OathKeepers militia, along with 10 other members, have been arrested and charged with seditious conspiracy against the United States. This stems, of course, from the January 6th riot. Now, many people on the right are questioning the timing of this. It was not that long ago that the FBI said there was scant evidence of coordination to enter the Capitol and disrupt anything. But now, with these charges, the DOJ is saying this group did conspire to disrupt an official proceeding. Since the start of the January 6th committee hearings and the arrests that took place on that day, there have been no arrests or charges related to anything pertaining to an insurrection, sedition, or a conspiracy until now. Now, many people on the right said this is evidence that it was not an insurrection, that this was just a riot. And if you look at the photos, I'll tell you this, they're bad. While it is true that many people were let in and they bumbled in and walked in and were acting rather tactlessly, I'll put it that way, there were many people fighting with police, attacking cops, and trying to break their way in through the tunnel entrance of the Capitol building. It was bad. But perhaps it was just a riot. Now, I think it's fair to say that there always was an intention to charge people with something more than just trespassing. And there may be a good reason, well, not a good reason, but a good reason for Democrats in the establishment as to why they waited so long. In 2021, if they had arrested these people and charged them with insurrection, the news cycle would have ended. We'd have talked about it. We'd have got bored with it. And that's 2 years until the midterms. So, as they say, a year, 2 years, that's an eternity in electoral politics. The best thing for the establishment, for the bureaucratic and administrative state, is to make all of these arrests and have all of these charges come in an election year, which is now. I've warned all of you, 2022 is going to get crazy. Timcast IRL, we got swatted. I know, I'm sorry for mentioning it so often, but isn't that serious? And we've been dealing with cyber attacks, trying to take down our network, actually knocking our show off the air. There are death threats against prominent individuals in government. Things are getting insane. I don't know what's going to happen, but I can tell you censorship, smears, harassment, and criminal prosecution will be rampant this year. I'd say, in my opinion, but we're watching it right now. 13 days into 2022. There are several strategies we'll see take place. They're going to attempt to silence individuals who promote anti-establishment figures, and by any means necessary, up to and including criminal charges and false allegations. And they'll try to drain the resources of these individuals. We see this with people like Alex Jones. But I think it's going to get bad. They're going to try to disqualify members of Congress so they can't even run. And they're going to be ramping up criminal charges. Now, I'll be the first to say, if these guys did engage in some kind of conspiracy, then by all means, prosecute them, lock them up. I mean it. But you're going to need some real evidence. I'm going to need some real evidence. And right now, it seems the only evidence is a handful of people who are being effectively tortured, as it was described, even by Democrats. Them flipping and saying, oh, yeah, we did actually plan that. Really? You see, many people who were arrested on January 6th were dealing with torturous conditions. It was so bad, even Democrats came out to defend them. So I wonder, perhaps the reason we aren't seeing any charges until now was because it took this long to abuse the people in jail into giving false testimony. I'm not here to diminish these arrests. I'm not here to push any conspiracy theories. These guys were there. And if there's evidence to back up the claims made by the DOJ, then so be it. By all means, absolutely arrest them. But I think it's fair to point out that as contentious as things have become in this country, we're going to see a lot of dirty games. And now the Democrats have their official sedition and insurrection narrative. Before we get started, head over to timcast.com where you can read this story, but also become a member by clicking the sign up button to support our work, our fierce and independent journalism, videos like this. As a member, you'll get access to exclusive members-only segments of the Timcast IRL podcast. We had a bunch of really amazing guests. As of recent, we had Marjorie Taylor Greene. You're going to want to see what she has to say, and that's all at timcast.com. So again, become a member, but don't forget, like this video right now, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends, let them know what's going on. Now, Let's read this news. We got timcast.com reporting, breaking, OathKeepers leader and 10 members charged with seditious conspiracy over January 6th. The charges stem from the organization's involvement in the January 6th protest at the Capitol last year. Rhodes, 56, was arrested in Little Elm, Texas on Thursday. Quote, a federal grand jury in the District of Columbia returned an indictment yesterday, which was unsealed today, charging 11 defendants with seditious conspiracy and other charges for crimes related to the breach of the U.S. Capitol on January 6, which disrupted a joint session of the U.S. Congress that was in the process of ascertaining and counting the electoral votes related to the presidential election, the Justice Department said in a press release about the arrests. They're going to mention the other individuals who were named. Rhodes and Vallejo did not have prior charges related to January 6, but the others had been previously arrested. Quote, 8 other individuals affiliated with the OathKeepers, all previously charged in the investigation, remain as defendants in 2 related cases. All defendants except Rhodes and Vallejo previously were charged in a superseding indictment. The superseding indictment has now effectively been split into 3 parts. The 11-defendant seditious conspiracy case, a 7-defendant original case, and a 3rd case against one of the previously charged defendants, the statement continued. The 19 total defendants have all been charged with corruptly obstructing an official proceeding. Only 11 are facing the seditious conspiracy charge. Quote, the seditious conspiracy indictment alleges that following the November 3rd, 2020 presidential election, Rhodes conspired with his co-defendants and others to oppose by force the execution of the laws governing the transfer of presidential power by January 20th, 2021, the DOJ said. Beginning in late December 2020, via encrypted and private communication applications, Rhodes and various co-conspirators coordinated and planned to travel to D.C. on or around January 6, 2021, the date of the certification of the Electoral College vote, the indictment alleges. Rhodes and several co-conspirators made plans to bring weapons to the area to support the operation. The co-conspirators then traveled across the country to the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area in early January 2021. The DOJ added, the defendants conspired through a variety of manners and means, including organizing into teams that were prepared and willing to use force and to transport firearms and ammunition into Washington, D.C., recruiting members and affiliates to participate in the conspiracy, organizing trainings to teach and learn paramilitary combat tactics, bringing and contributing paramilitary gear, weapons, and supplies, including knives, batons, camouflage combat uniforms, tactical vests with plates, helmets, eye protection, and radio equipment to the Capitol grounds, breaching and attempting to take control of the Capitol grounds and building on January 6, 2021, in an effort to prevent, hinder, and delay the certification of the Electoral College vote, using force against law enforcement officers while inside the Capitol on January 6, continuing to plot after January 6 to oppose by force the lawful transfer of presidential power, and using websites, social media, text messaging, and encrypted messaging applications to communicate with co-conspirators and others. The case is being prosecuted by the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia and the Department of Justice National Security Division's Counterterrorism Section. The U.S. Attorney's Office in the Northern District of Texas and the District of Arizona have also provided assistance. Over 725 individuals have now been arrested for the events on January 6, spanning nearly every state. I want to point out, there was a tweet from someone who said that they were privy to a panel discussion with regular Americans. They were asked about the events of January 6, and they all basically downplayed it and said they did not care. They didn't. They were more concerned with the economy, with jobs, with getting this country back on track. But the Democrats have staked everything on January 6th. They need this. And this is really, really good for them. Now, there's 2 ways this is being viewed. On the political establishment left, they're saying, see, this is exactly what we knew and what we expected. On the right, they're saying, this is exactly what they knew we knew they were going to do. The right does not view this as legitimate. The left thinks it's proving everything that they've been saying. But there is a problem here. The way the media has played this, the way the establishment has played this, to be completely honest. In August, Reuters reported FBI finds scant evidence of U.S. Capitol FBI finds scant evidence U.S. Capitol attack was coordinated. As you can see, it was mostly the right that reported this, according to ground.news. And this is a problem. How did we go from The FBI saying scant evidence of coordination to now learning that the FBI had a grand jury convened alleging that there was a conspiracy taking place. Something doesn't make sense. Now, I am not here to say they're wrong. I am not here to push conspiracy theories. I'm here to just say, you know what? Bring on the evidence, bring on the criminal charges, and convict those who are guilty of the crimes. They are innocent until proven guilty, and I'm absolutely willing to sit back and say, let's see what you got. But certainly there are many people who are concerned about the treatment of those who are defendants in this case. Some would suggest that this mistreatment has resulted in all the evidence the DOJ needed to finally claim conspiracy. Because Stewart Rhodes had stated previously, and this is reported by the New York Times, that there was no plan to go inside. The people who went inside broke the rules and were not following their protocols. And well, too bad, Stewart. If you form a group and members of that group act, yeah, they're going to pin it on you. And that's what we've seen, and that's what we know. You know, I had a conversation, I think it was Andrew Branca, the law of self-defense. And he was mentioning the dangers of a neighborhood watch. You have Black Lives Matter riots. But if you form a neighborhood watch to try and prevent riots, they'll claim you're a group and you're conspiring. And that's where things get crazy, isn't it? Here's a story from Politico. January 6 defendants win unlikely Democrat champions as they face harsh detainment. Solitary confinement is a form of punishment that is cruel and psychologically damaging, said Elizabeth Warren. The treatment of the people arrested on January 6 was so bad that in April of last year, even Elizabeth Warren was complaining about their treatment, with many saying they were being tortured. Now, all of a sudden, what do we have? We have OathKeepers coming out, refuting the statements of OathKeeper leadership and saying that, in fact, they did plan this. I find that very interesting. It's interesting because they're OathKeepers, supposedly upholding their oath, but they broke? Maybe it's true. Maybe that's just the reality. The New York Times reported on this, and they bring up some very interesting information. They say in an interview with the New York Times this summer, Mr. Rhodes expressed frustration that several members of his group had gone off mission by entering the Capitol on January 6th, quickly adding, "There were zero instructions from me or leadership to do so. But at least 4 OathKeepers who were at the Capitol that day and are cooperating with the government have sworn in court papers that the group intended to breach the building with the goal of obstructing the final certification of the Electoral College. Mr. Rhodes has also attracted the attention of House Select Committee investigating January 6th, blah, blah, blah. We know where this all went. Results in all of their arrests. So 4 OathKeepers cooperating with the government tell the government what they want to hear. I wonder when that happened, because in August, the FBI said they had no evidence. Well, since then, they have found that evidence. And maybe it's real. Maybe it's legitimate. Maybe these OathKeepers had a turn of conscience and said, you know what? Bureaucratic state, you're right. We're so sorry. Here's what really happened. You know why I don't believe it? It's not because I believe in any grand conspiracy theories or anything. It's because you want me to believe that people who engaged in a seditious conspiracy then just went and spilled all the beans to the people they were engaging in the conspiracy against? Sorry, I find that hard to believe. That these people were coordinating an effort to stop the certification of the election. They were going up against the U.S. government. And now they're like, we'll just tell you everything you want to hear. That doesn't sound like it makes sense. But let's be real. Many of these people who were storming their way in were not very smart. And maybe now they're realizing they were not very smart. It was a stupid thing to do. It was wrong to do. And it's only made everything worse for Trump, conservatives, and those who believe in freedom. It is now, January 6th is being used as a precursor to file criminal complaints against the previous administration. They're doing it to Steve Bannon, Mark Meadows. They're going after everybody. They went after Alex Jones. What did he have to do with this? Alex Jones was out there bullhorning with a legal permit saying, do not go to the building. Do not go inside. And they're trying to go after him. There's one individual who's a Republican strategist, and they filed that they're demanding he cooperate with the committee. And he's like, not only did I not work for these people, I wasn't there. I had no involvement in planning. Why am I being subpoenaed? Look, man, you're fighting an uphill battle. You do not have the high ground like Antifa. You don't have the media on your side. This is what they do to people. We have this story from Record Online. Capitol riot suspect from Newburgh tells judge his solitary confinement is inhumane. We have this story from the Arkansas Democrat. Lawyer says Gravette man charged in Capitol riot tortured in D.C. jail. And we can see how much worse it's getting. Mike Flynn likens Pelosi to Roman governor who executed Jesus. Modern day Pontius Pilate. Wow. Crazy. I mean, that's rhetoric, sure. But we're seeing this very serious escalation, man. And people tell me I'm wrong. People tell me that we're not heading towards some kind of civil war. Man, I don't know. Maybe I am wrong. Maybe there's a lot that I can't see, and that is fair, and that is true. I am not omniscient. I'm just a dude reading the news, trying to fact check things. There's probably a lot of stuff I don't know about. Actually, no, I'll say there is a lot that I don't know. There are many things I don't know. But I'll tell you this. Newsweek. Marjorie Taylor Greene suggests Second Amendment rights should be used against Democrats. A little bold framing, I'll be honest, but not completely wrong. This is where we're at. Don't you understand what this rhetoric leads to? I don't understand the naysayers who watched the far left take over several blocks in Seattle for weeks with rifles marching around, denying science, as it were. And then they opened fire on an SUV, killed a teenager. The same thing happened in Minneapolis, the George Floyd Autonomous Zone. They tried doing it in Portland. We are watching extremists seize territory in our own cities, and people are going, there's no civil war. It's amazing. It's amazing that they would still call it cold. At a certain point, right-wing groups will be purged and arrested. They'll be up against the establishment left, which currently controls the reins of power. Far left groups take over cities and riot for months, and people just say, it's normal. Nothing's happening. What's normal about far left extremists and communists seizing several city blocks of a city and a police station, a government building? If that happened in any other country, they'd be like, wow, civil war is kicking off. And yet, what do we get from the mainstream press? Oh, they're talking about civil war now, but they're only talking about January 6th. I don't care what you think about January 6th. It matters, and so do the Black Lives Matter riots. You can say that January 6th was no big deal. You can say it was a riot. Fine, I don't care. Black Lives Matter were riots too, and I still think it's indicative of a civil war. What did Marjorie Taylor Greene actually say? Well, they don't give us the full quote, so I don't trust them. Marjorie Taylor Greene said she is not a violent person, and she hopes to never see a civil war in this country. That's fair. They go on, this Newsweek article reports, Marjorie Taylor Greene offering advice to Georgia's current governor and state lawmakers, urging them to pass and sign legislation to combat Abrams' call for grabbing people's guns. She went on to say, ultimately, the truth is, it's our Second Amendment rights, our right to bear arms that protects Americans and gives us the ability to defend ourselves from a tyrannical government. And I hate to use this language, but Democrats, they're doing exactly what our founders talked about when they gave us the precious rights that we have. She did not say the precious rights of the Second Amendment. The media lies. She was talking about Second Amendment rights, but in that context of the founders, she was talking about all of our rights. You could very well say, she says, use the First Amendment against Democrats, which we should. We should be peaceably assembling, and we should be talking and discussing and practicing our right to speech and the press and all of that stuff to stop tyranny. And in the event crimes are committed by the government, yes, we have a Second Amendment for just that. Now, I hope it never comes to that, and I don't think we're anywhere near that just yet. But I tell you, man, it's closer than people think. They don't want to admit it. They don't want to. They don't want to believe that we really could be at the boiling point. They don't want to believe it could happen here, but it is not only possible, it is happening here. People just don't want to believe it. Can I just point out that the January 6th committee is filing criminal complaints, criminal referrals against members of the previous administration? We were told when Donald Trump was campaigning in 2015, when he was like, Hillary Clinton, lock her up. They said, how dare Trump say that? That's crazy rhetoric. And I'm like, it is, it's true. I mean, I think Hillary Clinton broke the law with the emails thing, so maybe she shouldn't be able to run for office. But it is crazy. And now here we are where they're actually doing it. You know, it may be crazy, But I think the alternative is worse. If you do not criminally charge those who break the law, then you have no system, because people aren't going to believe the system works. The guilty parties get away with it. The problem there is that when the left believes a bunch of crackpot BS because the media lies, they then demand people get arrested and charged when they didn't do anything wrong. I am not saying the Oath Keepers. I'm talking about members of Trump's administration, and I'm talking about people like Alex Jones, who they file subpoenas against. Well, Jones he pleaded the fifth. I think it's pleaded, right? Pled the fifth. So we'll see. We'll see how that plays out. But I just think everything's falling apart. There's something dramatic happening in this country. And there's this Twitter thread that I find fascinating from Elizabeth Steinberg. I'm not familiar with who she is. She's just someone with a few thousand followers, and she tweeted, "If you told lifelong Democrats in 2019 that by 2022 they'd become single-issue voters for the other side, they would have said you're nuts. They also would have said you were nuts if you told them that after 2019 their opinions would be right-wing." Oh, yeah. And yet here we are. Did you question blue state COVID policy? Poof, you're now a Republican. Wanted your kids in school? Welcome to the other side. Said Florida wasn't doing so bad and maybe we could lighten up a bit? Start putting on your DeSantis 2024 yard sign. They called you an unhinged granny killer faster than you could say, let it rip. But even after they cast you aside and told you to grab your guns and flee the coast with your fellow Rush Limbaugh-loving comrades, you weren't ready to privatize healthcare and head to the ballots. Even after they dragged your good name through the mud and gaslit you till you couldn't tell the difference between science and reading tea leaves, you weren't ready to break out the MAGA cap. They'd broken your bleeding liberal heart, but they hadn't broken your woke spirit. Now I'll pause there and say, I'm not going to go around wearing a MAGA hat. I'm not the biggest fan of Trump, but I absolutely oppose Biden, his DOJ, and what they're doing. Merrick Garland is insane. They said you'd changed, but you knew you were the same person with the same values. The world might be upside down, but you still knew your place. No matter how right-wing it was to say that kids were not filthy vectors of disease. You tried reasoning. You told them the kids weren't okay. They said kids are resilient. You told them who says no mask for 2-year-olds. They said that kids didn't complain. You told them schools in Europe were open. They said you wanted to kill teachers. You said test to stay. They said quarantine. You said learning loss. They said banana bread. You said extreme mandates. They said banning kids from Chuck E. Cheese's. You said safety theater. They said abundance of caution. You said small business were suffering. They said it's better not to eat a cheeseburger than to be dead. They pushed you into the arms of the enemy before the pajama class could say, we're all in this together. They took away everything, then said you were overreacting. They thought you'd get over it and forget they were wrong. Now, there's some optimism in this. Regular people waking up. Biden's approval rating drops to new low. 33% of American adults approve of the president's handling of COVID and the economy. Wow. Is it bad news for Biden? And so this is good news, in that regular people are waking up. But that just means the Democratic establishment is going to get desperate and panicky and insane. And of course, again, maybe the Oath Keepers did commit crimes and they should be arrested. Or maybe it's possible that as Joe Biden falters and fails, as his approval rating collapses and Democrats know they are going to be voted out in 2022, desperation emerges. I've wondered about this. The reason they were absolutely adamant about stopping Trump by any means necessary was because Trump was about to expose their little criminal activity. Joe Biden, what he did in Ukraine, I am disgusted. I am furious. And I'm very furious at the ignorant people of this country who defend this man. I think it's obvious when you look at the evidence. Donald Trump inadvertently stumbled upon the stupidity of Joe Biden. Joe Biden, who bragged that he told the president of Ukraine he wanted a quid pro quo. Fire the prosecutor or I will withhold your aid, $1 billion. He has no power to do that. He has no right to do that. But he did it for whatever the reason. So what did the establishment do? What did the bureaucratic administrative state do? They claimed it was in fact Trump who was pushing for the quid pro quo. They staged a fake whistleblower, and people fell for it. I'm sick of it. Joe Biden should be in prison for what he's done internationally with his son. These are criminal elements. Corrupt politicians. It is not a conspiracy. Corrupt politicians exist. Joe Biden is corrupt. Don't ask me. Don't take my word for it. Politico wrote the story, Biden Inc. talking about how his family's fortunes have tracked perfectly along his political career. He is a corrupt, duplicitous individual. He shared a bank account with his son. His son was cutting in 10% for the big guy. That's the dirty game they play. And that's why Joe Biden had to run and had to win. Because Trump was going to uncover the criminal activities of him and former administration officials. I think we see the evidence plain and clear, especially when you read Matt Taibbi's reporting on this, and he's far from conservative. So this is it. They know that they're failing. They know they're falling apart. And so they have no choice but to go extreme and go after anyone who dare oppose them. I don't know who swatted us. I don't know who is firing international botnet DDoS attacks against our network, but they are. And it's scary, really. You know, any minute. When those cops came in for the swatting, I was like, are we getting raided like James O'Keefe did? Are they going to come in here and claim we got some information? Hey, look, we do commentary on the news. Our news reporters aren't in this building. So ultimately, it turned out we just got swatted. But I wonder, is it only a matter of time before some false charges land in our lap? Some lies and manipulations like they did to James O'Keefe, claiming that they're investigating how he got the Biden diary. Was it Joe Biden's daughter, or is it her granddaughter? I'm not sure. Daughter? How did he get it? So they raid him, FBI? They're just trying to strain you for resources. The reason they filed these subpoenas against so many people is because it's expensive to respond to them. That's one of the reasons Alex Jones probably said he's going to plead the fifth. Not only because they're going to try and entrap him and claim he lied, but it's extremely expensive. I talked to many of these people, and they said, listen, when they subpoena you and say they want your records and you got to cooperate, you need to have a lawyer go through everything to figure out what documents they actually want. That costs money. It costs a lot of money. Things are changing, man. In a big story, the RNC moves to require presidential candidates to skip traditional commission debates. Yeah, what's the point? What's the point? If the Democrats control the presidential commissions and the debates are designed to defend and protect Democrats, why bother? This is the divide. People, they don't want to believe it, but this is the divide. There will no longer be a Republican-Democrat debate. It's just going to be the Republicans saying Democrats bad, Democrats saying Republicans bad. Now, some have said this is a negotiating tactic, that the RNC will boycott the Commission on Debates. There will be none, and all the networks will panic and say, no, 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 we need the ratings. And so then the RNC will come back and say, okay, we will agree to this, but we want some stipulations. They're going to say, you've got to have a moderator from certain outlets that we choose, and we want more control, and perhaps that'll be a good thing. But perhaps none of it matters. Because perhaps politics isn't the real catalyst for a civil war. Maybe it won't be abortion. You know, I said maybe it'll be abortion like slavery, a strong moral issue. Maybe it will just be fear. From USA Today, grocery stores still have empty shelves amid supply chain disruptions, Omicron, and winter storms. It's crazy, man. I went to the store this past weekend and things seemed mostly okay. Now people are saying they're going to the stores and there's nothing. I wonder about this. I live on the, we live and work between West Virginia and Maryland and Virginia. I live in West Virginia. We work out of Maryland. I went to the grocery store in West Virginia and everything seemed to be fairly fine. They don't got any mask mandates or anything. In Frederick County, where they do have a mask mandate, not so fine. I wonder if that has something to do with it. In West Virginia, there's no restrictions. In Maryland, there are restrictions. In which case, drivers won't come in. There may be many truckers saying, I'm not going to a mask mandate city or county. Bye-bye. So they don't. West Virginia, they got no problem. Maybe the employees say, I'm not going to do it. You're not going to make me do this job, and they quit. And in West Virginia, they say, I don't got to wear a mask. Could that be it? I don't know. It could just be that inflation is through the roof. Wholesale prices rose 10%, the biggest since 2010. And inflation is up 7%, and there's food shortages. So I'll tell you what really precipitates chaos, conflict, crisis, civil war, revolution, whatever. Hungry people. That's what it is. When people feel like elections don't matter, not much happens. And that's good for the establishment. Most people I've known never cared for elections. But when people can't eat, then they start to get worried. Then they start to get angry. Then they start to say, why is this happening? Then they start to ask questions. Then they show up in the streets. Then you end up with angry people throwing things because they're hungry. Store shelves running empty does not mean people are starving. People are very well fed in this country. But if this gets worse, if there is no end in sight, then it gets bad. So here's what I can say. The Oath Keepers, well, they made their bed. We'll see what happens. You people who went down on January 6th and entered the Capitol building, you made your bed. And if you've committed crimes, you will be held accountable for them. But it does show that people are fed up and willing to commit those crimes. And that's the crazy thing. Because I'll tell you what will happen. If there really is a civil conflict, or I'll tell you, if Donald Trump gets elected in 2024, any charges, any convictions will probably be overturned. Trump's going to be like, no, get him out of there. He'll have one more term. And with that one more term, Trump will go nuclear. And the establishment knows it. So they're panicking. In Trump's first term, he says, I won't go too crazy, because I want to win re-election. But I'd be willing to bet that in a second term, Trump's going to be like, no holds barred. I got one term left. We're going nuclear. So here's what I can tell you. Expect it to get worse. This year, we'll see if we don't get banned. Tons of people are going to get banned and suspended. They're going to go after Crowder. They've already been going after him. They're going to ban so many people because they can't allow me on Timcast IRL to host people like Marjorie Taylor Greene. Oh, they don't want her to win re-election, so they'll shut that down. Can't have it. Can't have these personalities on the internet. It'll be worse than that, though. People will be attacked. People will be killed, probably. Like, we've already seen many people die. So, and you're going to see more criminal prosecutions and convictions. Get ready. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 8 p.m. over at youtube.com/TimcastIRL. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you all then.